Hey folks, Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man at your services. How are you all? I hope you're all doing very, very well. Welcome to the beginning of a little mini festival, a celebration, the true dark prince of horror, Vincent Price, yes, the Lord of the Macabre. And this little festival is going to be mainly about two of his greatest screen characterizations, but in 3 movies. So you got one movie, this one, then its sequel to this one, and then another one. So 3 movies are going to be in this festival. And then if I'm really, really feeling enthusiastic, I might add a few more. Who knows? Who knows? It's Vincent Price. He has done gazillion movies. A true fine actor. A Shakespearean actor. A lover of fine foods, fine wines, and the arts. A collector of art and sculptures. A very learned man with a wicked sense of humour. And quite a randy so-and-so as well. But we'll save those anecdotes for later in the celebration. Right now we're going to talk about 1971's glorious The Abominable Dr. Phibes. Oh God. You're hearing its really avant-garde, jazzy soundtrack by, I forgot his name again, Basil Kirchin. Basil Kaching! And it's dreamy, it's swoony, it's woozy. It's not typical of, your gruesome murder set piece horror movie, which is what Dr. Phibes actually is. It's a progenitor for the likes of Seven, Saw, even the likes of The Omen with its set piece murders. And it also has its foundations in the likes of Fu Manchu and the Phantom of the Opera, who's lurking somewhere over here. Yes, there he is, over there. And it is a gloriously camp, a little bit kitsch, but OTT horror comedy. It is hysterically funny, but it's also extremely gruesome, but without adhering to a lot of gore and effect. It doesn't do that, it implies so much. Because Vincent Price, and his ilk, Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, always said, they don't like the gory stuff, the all-out gore of nowadays, meaning the 70s onwards, after the floodgates of 1968, which of course, Night of the Living Dead, and then you'd have the likes of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Last House on the Left, and just gore, violence, nudity, and all the things which, Hammer really did make their name with, but they didn't go anywhere near as far as what would happen next in the late 60s and 70s onwards. But this film was for AIP, American International Pictures. Yes, run of course by Sam Z. Arkoff. An ogre, by all accounts. An obnoxious pig. Rude, crude and arrogant. With no love of the actual movie making process. It was just about this, money. And he had, of course, Vincent Price on contract. And at the time of the making of this movie, Vincent Price was none too happy with AIP. He'd done a slew of Edgar Allan Poe movies for Roger Corman. And works of art they are. They're glorious, and he is the mainstay. But he's also broken out as well and done things like Witchfinder General and Cry the Banshee, just before this, of course. And for Gordon Hessler. And it was Gordon Hessler who was approached to direct this movie, The Abominable Dr. Phibes, written by William Goldstein from his own story, based on a dream that he had, apparently. And it was originally titled The Fingers of Dr. Phibes, then it became The Curse of Dr. Phibes, and it went through various permutations, as these things often do. And Gordon Hessler didn't like the version that he was handed, and Simon Z. Arkoff didn't like Gordon Hessler, and pretty soon they parted company. And with a slew of producers as well, who all had a hand in trying to change this story, this screenplay, into something workable and tangible for their big star, their horror icon, Vincent Price. Make it work for him. Not to say he was under contract to AIP and Arkoff, getting disillusioned. He wanted to branch out into other things. He was a very, very great actor. He was a poet, a lecturer, the spoken word in that voice, of course. He was in demand everywhere. He was working for Sears, the American company Sears, and he was being the poster boy for them, advertising their stuff. He was getting art and sculptures, paintings into the mainstream. They were using him, but he was using them at the same time. But he was being used massively by AIP and Samuel Z. Arkoff. So he wanted out, but he loved England, and he'd been doing so many movies in England, and he loved it here. Because I'm in England at the moment, and cheers, y'all. So it was a double-edged sword. He wanted to stay in England, loved it here. He had access to fine arts and wonderful places and great people that he met. One in particular, of course. And but he had to keep working, obviously. And he was a guy now, early 60s. Well, I think he was just turned 60. So, he didn't have a lot of... There weren't that many options open to him. Although you think of Vincent Price, superstar. But, if you're under contract, it's a bit difficult. You can be loaned out. And of course, at this particular time, AIP were beginning, it was the decline. It was the decline of a lot of American studios who were working in England. They'd all come to England because of the tax breaks and the fact that we had the best technicians here. A lot of different reasons for it. But the horror genre was about to go through a huge radical sort of revamping. And the old guard were going to get left behind. Oh, they battle on for a while. All of them. Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Hammer and Vincent Price, obviously. And they would limp on. With some notable efforts later in the year, the 70s, and the early 80s, but it was sort of the dying days. Also, Vietnam was playing a huge part in this. So all of a sudden, American funding wasn't getting over to the UK to make these films. No, you want to make your movies, you've got to come back here, and we've got to keep industry here because we've got to fund the war machine for Vietnam. So yeah, a lot of things figured into this. And Arkoff just wanted money, money, money. So this script from it, the story by William Goldstein of Dr. Phibes, Dr. Anton Phibes. He's a doctor of music and a doctor of theology. The one idea that stayed from the original screenplay that he wrote, based on a dream that he had, was about someone wanting revenge and using as his methodology of killing his victims the plagues, the biblical plagues from the book of Exodus, from the Pharaoh. So pestilence, locusts, darkness, the death of the firstborn, all of these 10 plagues were going to be used as the modus operandi of our killer, Dr. Anton Phibes, who was a doctor of theology as well as music. Theology meaning that's how he learns about these things. He knows his Bible and all of the stuff that's in there. So the story is that Dr. Anton Phibes, his wife, who is played by Caroline Munro, say her name and bow down, become a penitent man before Caroline Munro, who is still utterly delectable. And I've met 3 times. 2 times really embarrassingly as well, but we won't go into them. What? Yeah, a voice in my ear telling me, oh, I've already talked about him. I've already talked about him in previous videos. You best go search them out. But Caroline Munro, who plays his wife, she's not actually in the movie until the very end because she's dead. This is the whole point of the film. The story is that his wife died on the operating table, and all the doctors, the head surgeon and the doctors and the nurse, Dr. Anton Phibes, blames for her death, their mishandling of her operation. And of course, the main guy, I get this guy's name wrong all the time, Dr. Vesalius, played by Joseph Cotton, the once great Joseph Cotton. His film career was in decline seriously at this particular time, but he plays Dr. Vesalius. Now, the name Vesalius is from the Flemish 16th century anatomical ideologist. This is a guy that, like Frankenstein, was getting bodies, cadavers, and cutting them up and learning about bodies and how the body works, how to use muscles and tissues and like work how organs and everything comes together, and also the birthplace of autopsies. So his name, Joseph Cotton, who was the head surgeon in charge of Anton Phibes' wife's operation. He's based on that. Now he was in charge, but she died under the knife. 6 minutes into the operation, and the news gets to Anton Phibes that she's in a terrible state. We don't find out what was wrong with her. There is some disease, some condition, and he's in Switzerland. I think it's Switzerland, and in his car. It's, by the way, this is set in the 1930s, but you've got to go back about 5 years to this sort of the idea of how Anton Phibes became the demonic, diabolical machine of vengeance that he is. He races with it in his Rolls Royce or Bentley or whatever it is through the Swiss Alps. They overturn, they crash, they burn, and he's assumed dead, incinerated. So, sadly, the wife has died. He died rushing to be by her side. Massive tragedy. But our film starts off with, in the most crazy set pieces, we are in an Art Deco mansion house. We don't know where it is. There is a clockwork band, full-size clockwork musicians, a jazz band, and they strike up, and they're playing. They are called Dr. Phibes Wizards. I've written it down somewhere. What are they called? Dr. Phibes Clockwork Wizards. It's a wonderful touch. And we have the voluptuous, gorgeous, oh God, I'm forgetting everyone's name, I don't believe it. Vulnavia. I know this film so well, and yet there's a lot of characters and a lot of different names, and you Phibes, Vulnavia, Vesalius, oh God, it doesn't matter. We'll get there. Just bear with me. With this opening, the organ, careful now, rises, brightly lit up, brightly coloured. You might be able to see an image of it there. There's the organ, there. And there's Dr. Phibes. An unmasked Dr. Phibes there, Vincent Price. And he rises up and he's playing the organ, and he's dressed in robes and he's quite flamboyant. And in another part, there's a huge marble, lovely shiny marble sort of dance floor, and there's all other areas. It's a lovely, ornate, fantastic Art Deco design. All designs by Brian Eatwell. What a great name. You expect him to be a big fat bastard with a name like Brian Eatwell, but he's not. He's not actually, but he had a tremendously visual style. So the film, directed by Robert Fuest, because Robert Fuest came in to replace Gordon Hessler, who was whisked off. Didn't like it, didn't get on with Sam Arkoff. So Robert Fuest came in. And Robert Fuest was perfect for this, but we'll come on to all that. This organ comes up, and the clockwork band's playing, and Vulnavia suddenly appears. Virginia North plays Vulnavia. She's an Anglo-American actress, but model mainly, who is his assistant, and she is mute. Now let's get this out the way straight away now, because there's a lot of confusion over this, because this is an element which was not put into the final finished version of the screenplay. She's mute, and she assists Dr. Phibes in his murders, his revenge spree of all the surgeon team and the nurse involved in the death of his wife, Caroline Monroe. Okay, that's the plot basically. But Vulnavia, gorgeous, delectable, a temptress, and she'll use her womanly wiles as such to lure victims into their deaths. And but she doesn't speak, and she has a very immobile sort of face. Now the whole reason behind that is that he's got his clockwork band there, but the original script idea was that she was also a robot. So I just want to clear this up right now. she was meant to be a robot, and there'd be a key which could be inserted into the back of her head, and like wind it up, yeah, and off she'd go. Clockwork Superwoman. That is not told in the movie. But you can kind of glean from what you see that, you know, she's not really all there. Who is she? What is she? The daughter? Is she meant to be a replacement for his wife? Clearly not, because it's his undying love for his wife that drives him on. He wants to get revenge for her death, and then at the end, the culmination of all that, his end game is then to join her in the afterlife. That's what he wants to do. So Vulnavia is not going to be a replacement for her. Although, you know, if you get a bit bored of a nighttime, she's very nice. She's not Caroline Munro nice, but she's very nice just the same. But she will be his assistant. So we get this elaborate beginning in this with glorious, bizarre avant-garde music, and this spellbindingly kind of psychedelic sort of psychedelics mixed with Art Deco, and this kind of Baroque style. It's really bizarre. Robert Fuest, as I said, is the perfect guy for this. When you watch the movie, there's a devilish, mischievous sense of humour. There's a sci-fi feel to it. There's bumbling coppers, which don't worry, we're going to go into all this. There's bumbling coppers. There's loads of things, gruesome deaths, completely out there sort of ideas, which when you watch it, certainly reminds me enormously of the Avengers. You know, John Steed, Diana Rigg, you know, yeah. Robert Fuest actually directed a few episodes of the original Avengers, and he worked with Brian Clemens. Brian Clemens loved Robert Fuest. So that sensibility of the Avengers very definitely creeps into the Abominable Dr. Phibes. And I think from now on we'll just call it Dr. Phibes, because I've got a feeling I'm going to struggle with the word abominable. I've done well so far, but normally it's one of those words you trip over. Abominable. You know, like linoleum. Oh, forget it. And imagine if you had, you know, oh, there's a new brand called It's Abominable Linoleum. It's Abominable Linoleum. Our first kill. We don't see the first kill, but we learn about it. The first kill was a guy, one of the doctors on the team, was killed by bees. Because one of the plagues is boils, and the victim was found. You don't see any of this, but the victim was found, and he was a mess. His entire body was just like, he was covered in boils, bee stings. But our first kill that we do see is Dr. Oh dear God, let's find this guy. It's Dr. Dunwoody, played by Edward Burnham. And he goes to bed at his mansion house, and we've seen the Rolls Royce, the old, this 1930s now, supposed to be. This Rolls Royce pulls up, and it's Vulnavia driving, and you have Dr. Phibes in the back. Dr. Phibes is somehow going to get on the roof, and he's going to lift up a skylight, and he's going to lower a cage, a sort of a blanketed cage full of bats in there, and then release them, pull the cage back up, shut the skylight, and overnight the bats are going to feast on this poor guy, which they do. Next morning, knock on the door. Sir, your breakfast, says the old retainer. Your breakfast. Opens the door because no one's answered, and like a bat flies past him. What's that about? You know, and then he sees there's his lord and master prostrate on the bed, and his face has been ravaged, ripped up by bats. Because, you know, bats do that, don't they? They don't. But it is quite a good scene. And in fact, because the guy wakes up a couple of times, and he's like, because he hears something which we don't. And in his creepy sort of huge, you know, boudoir, and he's alone. There's no Mrs. Dunwoody, was it? Whatever. And then you see a shadow flutter past. And he's looking around, and then suddenly a bat appears, and you've got there's a couple of real bats in here, and there's a couple of fake ones on like strings, but it doesn't matter. And they start crawling up the sheets towards him. Oh, he's a goner. So we now, when the police turn up, Scotland Yard, no less, turn up, and this is another one of the reasons why this film works so well, is the brilliance. I keep wanting to say bumbling. They actually are not bumbling. They do everything they possibly can, but Dr. Phibes is always one step ahead of them, one step behind them, or one step either side of them. So he's circumnavigating all their tactics to try and save these future doctors from their imminent demises, and they always fail. But it's not their fault. They're doing the best they can, and they are headed up by, I've got to get this right, Peter Jeffrey as Inspector Trout. Now, Peter Jeffrey is a massively common face from the 60s and 70s and into the 80s on TV, British TV. Comedies, dramas, he was always there. He's absolutely bloody wonderful. Everyone's great in this movie, but it's Vincent Price's baby. Oh my God, we're going to talk more about the price, because the price is definitely right with this one. And but Peter Jeffrey he's so bloody good as Inspector Trout, because he's kind of like, there's an Inspector Clouseau. You kind of feel that, because he's a bit of an idiot as well, but he's also trying to do the right thing all the time. But he comes up against bureaucracy, the sheer pencil pushing red tape bastards in charge. He's got his own captain, or whatever the hell his rank is. But then you've got Superintendent Waverley, who is played by, oh no, and I forgot this guy's name as well. It's John Cater, for God's sake. And John Cater, as Superintendent Waverley, keeps getting Inspector Trout's name wrong. Pike? No, it's Breen, sir. Next time, it's Breen. It's Trout, sir. It's Trout. Next time, Waverley calls him Inspector Breen. It's Trout, sir. And this becomes an ongoing thing. But Inspector Trout is superb. And the first killing, that we see, the bats, him and he's got a Sergeant Schneerly, something like that, played by Norman Jones, who looks like almost like a clone of Stanley Baker. Stanley Baker in some of those hard-hitting crime thrillers of the 70s looks a little bit like that, with the moustache and the receding hairline. And it's him. It's the sergeant who says, there's something about this. The bats killed this guy. And Trout's going, well, what is it, Sergeant? What is it? He said, well, I don't know. It's just a few days ago there was another killing, and there was another doctor as well, and it was bees that killed him, sir. Bees, and they're going So the connections are drawn, but there's a bit of sort of slapstick with a wardrobe, where they walk through the wardrobe and all this, trying to find clues, and there's other coppers all over the place. There's one on top of the wardrobe as well. It's a little bit bizarre, and all of a sudden it's tongue-in-cheek. It's not taking itself at all seriously, and there is your real key into understanding and really enjoying the Abominable Dr. Phibes. I'm doing really well with that word, aren't I? And so they begin. There's something going on here. Why would there be two doctors getting killed in such a bizarre fashion? We'll get another death, and it's the great Terry Thomas. Oh, Terry Thomas with his moustache and his yes. It's very Benny Hill. It's very Carry On. It's very risque Ealing sort of style. But Terry Thomas, and he's wonderful. And he's another doctor who was on the team. But he's a randy old bastard, this guy. And he has a lovely house retainer as well, played by Barbara Keogh. And Barbara Keogh plays, I think she's called Mrs. Frawley. And I would say that the only three-dimensional victim that we have, or kind of rounded character that we have who gets killed off, is Terry Thomas. Because the others they're just presented and they're killed pretty quickly. You don't have any idea who or what they are. They just arrive and die badly. But you have Terry Thomas. Oh God. she's trying to give him his supper, and I've always had a thing for older women. Marry one, did I not? And she's quite attractive, I find, Mrs. Frawley. And right, you don't mind me having the I've given a really old voice there. She's not that old at all. Not in this movie. You don't mind me having the evening off, do you, sir? And he's like, no. You just go. Go. He's got brandy there. You go. Have a lovely time. Yeah. Oh, have you got the package? Oh yes, I've got the package. Wrapped up in brown paper. Oh yeah. You go have a good time. Oh, we can't wait to get this open. And what's he got? He's got a 1930s cine projector, and he's got a little cloth, to present it on, project it onto. It's a naughty movie. It's a crackly old. It's a belly dancing snake charmer, female, doing all that sort of stuff and playing around with the snake. Once this, he's cranking it up. I mean, this is brilliant. He's quaffing brandy in the big brandy glass, and he's doing all this as well. A rather amusing camera angle as well from behind, where all you see is his arm moving like this while this flickering proto-porno is on the screen. I'll say no more. But he's cranking this thing up, and he's going, oh, and then when the snake comes out, she starts dancing with the snake. He's like, he's genuinely excited by it. Terry Thomas is superb. But as he looks, suddenly he sees beneath the projector screen, there's a couple of feet there, and he goes, and then looks up, and it's Mrs. Frawley's come back, which is on the other side of the screen, and he's like, you haven't eaten your tea, and what's all this? She's behind the screen. Oh, it's the latest thing. It's to exclude drafts. And she's like, only covers half the doorway. But off she goes. She goes back to his private fun and games. But someone else arrives because, oh yes, the Rolls Royce has turned up outside, and there's Vulnavia in the doorway. And she just takes down, the projector screen, and of course he's like that with his brandy. And with her powers of seduction, silent seduction, she manages to get him into the chair, sit him down. He's like, oh. She manages to tie him to the chair. Note to everybody: if someone comes in, turns you on, without you having arranged it, and then ties you to a chair, don't go thinking your luck is in. It's too good to be true. You're gonna die. And next thing you know, we have Vincent Price arrives, Dr. Phibes. And now we can kind of say about Dr. Phibes' makeup. Dr. Phibes is hideously burnt. I mean, this is all going to be spoilers, folks, so, he's hideously burnt. His face has been completely taken off. It's all like, and he looks like that over there. A little bit like the Phantom, a little bit like this. He's disfigured to hell and back. So what he does, he puts on like a fake nose, fake cheeks, he puts on a beard, and he puts on a little wig, and he looks just like a very inert, voiceless Vincent Price. Come on to all this. And he suddenly turns up. I wouldn't say grinning or prancing round. He doesn't do any of that. Doesn't need to. His eyes convey it all. And which is the genius of Vincent Price, even when not using that fabulous, fabulous voice. And Terry Thomas just goes, who's this? He's not going to get the answer. Because suddenly, now don't forget, these guys who are dying are doctors. They're all surgeons. And Vincent Price, Dr. Phibes, and Vulnavia open like the Jack the Ripper Gladstone bag, whoosh, and all this stuff comes out. A few glass jars, and a tube, a big syringe, and a big fucking needle. Oh Christ. This is in a film which is not gory and yet actually has a lot of nasty kills. This one gets me quite a bit. And it's Terry Thomas who makes it Terry Thomas is a comedy actor, but also a great actor as well. And my God, so he's there, he's tied to the chair, and like Phibes slits his sleeve open and then gets this, and with his inert face. The joke is that you've got Vincent Price, his real face, and they've put a mask on him and makeup on him to make it look like it's a fake face that looks like Vincent Price. And when the mask comes off, it's really a disfigured, horrible face by Trevor. Trevor Cole Reese did the makeup. When the mask comes off and you see the real face, the disfigured sort of phantom face, it's great, except for one thing that you can quite plainly see around the eyes, Vincent Price's real skin. So it's like the Russian dolls. You've got, the fake Vincent Price face, tick it off, nasty face, tick that off, and it's really Vincent Price underneath. So I like it, it's funny. And the reason why Vincent Price can't move his mouth at all, even though he damn well wants to. We'll talk about his antics and what Vincent Price was like on set. We'll talk about that in a bit. But Trevor Cole Reese used collodium, which is a horrible, horrible thing, to glue down his face, so his mouth wouldn't move. So he was under that makeup. It's only his eyes that could do anything, and his mannerisms. But he does it really well. So anyway, all these it's an empty jar, 8 of them. It's important. 8 jars are there, and he slits open Terry Thomas's sleeve. Terry Thomas is called Dr. Longstreet. And he sticks a bloody big hypo into his arm. You don't see it go in, but it cuts to Terry Thomas's face, and he just goes, and he fights against it. Now, folks, you can cut me with a knife. Some people have. I have got scars under this arm. I have scars here. I'm scarred to hell. I've had a few skirmishes in my time, and that's fine. That don't bother me at all. But I can't give blood for the simple reason I'm too fucking squeamish. And it's because when I have blood tests and I had tattoos, metal in the skin stays there for more than a few seconds. My body massively retaliates. And it's not something you can't control it. It's just one of those things. So I'm not good with that. But when I see him react, Terry Thomas's reactions, it makes me squirm, and he's fighting in the chair, and he's looking over, and the blood begins to fill the tube, and they're filling up all the bottles, and they're going to drain him of blood, because one of the plagues is blood. So he will be found again the next day, and our Inspector Trout and his sergeant will be there, and all the bottles are filled with blood, and 8 bottles, the entire body drained, and Terry Thomas is doing his best to sit still with greyed up makeup on him. He's completely drained. But they do freeze the frame because obviously he couldn't hold his breath for long enough. So there's a freeze frame shot there as well. And then they interview Barbara Keogh, Mrs. Frawley, to find out and they find also a medallion, because Phibes, doing this thing about the biblical plagues, he's using Hebrew medallions for each particular victim. And what he's got, after he kills each victim, in that lovely Art Deco, it's a 5-story mansion he's got, by the way, in Maldine Square in London. Maldine Square, he's got this fantastic 5-story mansion, and with basements and all sorts, and he's got a sort of a trophy table of waxwork heads of all the victims who look, and they are the effigy of, so harking back to the wax museum, of course, with Vincent Price. You've got these wax busts, and each one he'll put on the medallion reflecting that particular plague, and he'll use a blowtorch and burn it all away, burn the face away, and then he'll go and sit on the organ, steady. He'll play the organ phantom style, and then it'll descend into the basement, which you don't see down there until the end. So that's the ritual he goes through. But this time he's left behind the medallion, So like, and they found it, and Trout's going, do you know what this is? Is it yours? And she's going, oh, it's not mine. And it definitely isn't his, meaning Terry Thomas. So they've got a couple of clues now. Doctors are dying, in mysterious ways, and they've got this medallion. I'm holding up an invisible Hebrew medallion there. They work out, well, what's the connection with these doctors? And they're going to find out that Joseph Cotton as Dr. Let's get this right, Dr. Vesalius, worked with these guys. So they go and see him. And they're like, well, listen, Doctor, why would anyone be killing these people? I've got no idea, can't work it out. And I think while they're there, they get the call about Terry Thomas being drained of blood. I think that's when they find out about that. Because he just goes, oh, it's for you, Inspector. And he's going, right. What? When? We'll be right round. By the way, do you know a Dr. Oh, Christ. A Dr. Longstreet? And he goes, yes, I've worked with him as well. He goes, right. Something going on here. So they get Joseph Cotton's doctor to work out why anyone's killing off people that he's worked with, and is he a target? And he's like, there's 133 or 1200, I think it is, files of operations I've done with some of those doctors. Here's like 100 and so with three or more of those doctors. Here's like 10 with 4 of them, and here's 1 with all of them, with all these doctors. And so they work out, right, these guys are going to be on the hit list, and so are you. But who would have it in for you? They do work out that there's only one person who'd have a grudge, because that one operation was on the wife of Dr. Anton Phibes. So, well, where's this Phibes then? Well, Phibes is dead. Phibes was incinerated in his car, and his car overturned and exploded in Switzerland on his way back to see his wife. Oh, tragic story. Yeah, well, it is, but he's dead, so don't worry about it. Are we sure he's dead? Will someone else be doing this out of revenge? What? They can't work it out. But he's got that Hebrew medallion, so they go and see. Oh, I love this. Hugh Griffith is a Welsh actor, and he's in many movies, a lot of TV shows. He's a right booze hound, a real bad alcoholic, and oh, Jesus, they made him promise, don't drink. When you come to work, don't drink, because he could ruin everything. But he plays a Jewish rabbi, and he's the one who said, like, look, so you've had one killed by bees, one killed by bats, one drained of blood. I've missed one out, actually. I've missed the death out, and I've missed out the death that's probably the most celebrated of all, because it's the most bizarre, and it kind of harks back a bit to the Mask of the Red Death, which, of course, for Roger Corman, Vincent Price was Prince Prospero, and you had Hop Toad, you get set ablaze, anyway, in his full costume. But there is another killing which I have neglected to mention, because it's trying to fit them all together, how it all bleeds from one to the other. Because it's a very fast-moving movie. For a dated film, a lot of things happen very quickly, and it just keeps you going all the time. Cheers, y'all. You have Alex Scott as Dr. Hargreaves, and again, very early on in the movie, he goes to a masquerade, a masked ball, again, Mask of the Red Death, and he turns up there and he's like, oh, I didn't know it was a masked ball. And you've got Anton Phibes there with the Vincent Price mask makeup on, saying nothing. And he presents him with a very ornate, fabulous, livid green and gold frog's head mask, huge, outsized. It's like, oh wow. And this guy's clearly likes a bit of that, likes the look of the ladies there as well, although you can't see the ladies' faces, they've all got masks on. But these guys are all pervs, and but he puts, would you be so kind And Phibes hasn't said a word to him, and he hasn't even thought anything strange about that. So he turns around and he puts it on his head like that, and he goes, "Oh, thanks very much." But then he clasps it shut and locks it, right? And in so doing, it's got a sort of clockwork ratchet on it. So the minute you've locked it, the ratchets begin to pull in along the chain, along the link, tightening the mask. So he's there. Oh, it goes up a big spiral staircase. All women either side. Oh, yes, lovely. Oh, good to see you. It's hotter in here than I thought. You know. And he gets quite a way up there, and suddenly he's beginning to sway. And we cut to lots of images of the ratchets getting in tighter and tighter, and then suddenly we see his vision, and it turns all red. His head's being crushed, and in a delicious, superb little moment, when he first walks in and he meets Phibes, and he goes, "Oh, I didn't know it was a masked ball. I didn't know it was a fancy dress. I'm a doctor, you know. I'm a psychiatrist, a head shrinker. And in a great moment, it's only when you've seen the film and you watch it again that you pick up on it, because suddenly Vincent Price, he goes, "I'm a head shrinker." Vincent Price just turns to the camera and just goes, "Because that's what's going to happen to your head. I'm going to shrink it." It's deliciously sweet, beautifully baroque, and absolutely adorably bizarre. So his head gets crushed inside his head. He tumbles down the stairs. Blood, a little bit of blood comes out of the mask and all that. And in a queasy, weird moment, no one appears to be screaming. They're all kind of like just, it almost gives the impression that everyone who's observing this is laughing at him as well. Which kind of reminds me a lot of Vincent Price's masterpiece, which will come a few years later, which we're going to discuss, Theatre of Blood, where he has his own troupe of down and outs and meth drinkers who become his troupe, and they commit a lot of murders and then involved in the murders, and they're laughing and grinning the whole time. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of that, but that would come later. So this guy dies as well. So you've had a few deaths. The cops are putting it all together. That's how they've worked out. Look, Joseph Cotton, he was a head surgeon. Right, this one particular operation, she died. Her husband died trying to get to her side. So, but it's clearly all connected. So we've got to watch these other doctors. So there's another doctor. Sorry, we meet Hugh Griffith, the Jewish rabbi, the Welsh rabbi. I mean, a Welsh rabbit, but a Welsh rabbi. And he explains what the medallion means, and we've had people killed by bats, a big frog thing killed him, bees, and drained of blood. He goes, well, it's the 10 plagues of the pharaohs. It's the book of Exodus, and he reads them out. Now, William Goldstein and Robert Fuest and the other guy that helped write this, they screwed this up actually. If you were adhering to the book of Exodus, the plagues are actually different, and they're in a different order as well. I don't think it really matters. There's a plague of gnats. The gnats become the bats in this, and the plague of flies. And the plague of flies becomes rats. And the rats is the next killing. You've got Doctor, they keep getting this wrong. Like they keep getting Inspector Trout's name wrong. This other doctor, it's written Kitaj, Kitaj, but it's pronounced Kitai, Dr. Kitai. And he's played by Peter Guilfoyle from the Oneidin Line and many other things. He's in Carry On movies as well. And they're all very recognisable faces. And he's the adventurous sort of doctor. He's got his own biplane. He's got a de Havilland hornet moth. And he's taking a few days off, but he'll be at the airfield. He's going to fly his plane out to fucking wherever. Like, so you've got Norman Jones. Yeah, is it Norman Jones? Let's get that. Yeah, it is. I've got that right. As Sergeant Schnelly. And he's got like a. They find out where he is. He's about to fly off on his plane from an airfield, which is all great location work. It's all great. All the interiors are shot at Elstree Studios, but there's a lot of location work, and Highgate Cemetery plays a big part as well. So, there's a lot of great stuff. The film is beautifully eye-catching, beautifully vivid. The Art Deco surrounds, the studio sets are baroque and wonderful and bizarre, but a lot of exteriors are used as well. So, he's at the airfield with his de Havilland, and the sergeant, Norman Jones, as he's just took the first car that he sees to get out there in time. And you see Peter Guilfoyle gets in, Dr. Kitai gets in it, pulls the canopy down. Yep, he's all happy, and it's really pristine, big B-52 bomber jacket, like with the big fare around it. I've got that jacket, but mine looks proper and worn, whereas his is lovely and crisp and lovely, and it's just too neat. But off he flies. He's taxiing down the grass, and he got Norman Jones, the sergeant, in this jalopy, trying to catch up with him, but he doesn't see him at all. And this guy's fucking going hell for leather trying to stop him. Can't stop him. In the meantime, the Rolls Royce of Anton Phibes and Vulnavia has pulled up on a ridge overlooking this scene, and they get out and they erect the telescope. And Dr. Phibes sits down, Vincent Price, with the telescope, and observes the aerial display, because whilst he's up in the air, suddenly rats are unleashed upon him. Rats! And they're everywhere. They fill the cockpit, they're biting at him. There's one close-up of a bit of viscera being gnawed into. Don't worry, it's not that. It is not nasty at all. The implications are, the sergeant's on the deck, oh shit, blown that one, and didn't get there in time, and the plane begins to spiral out of control as he's being rat nibbled to hell and back, and then what gets me about this is, where's my drink gone? There it is. What gets me about that is that we know about the bees that killed one, we know about the bats, we know about the frog head, we know about the blood. It's all there, but the rats, well, when the plane hits the deck, that's a big flambe, isn't it? How did he know that rats were involved in it? How did he know that actually fits the bill? Well, they don't, but we do. So there you go. That's how you've got to take it. They must have found barbecued rat bodies, as well as the pilots. So anyway, so he's dead. And obviously, what's his name? Dr. Phibes and Vulnavia get back in the Rolls Royce, and off they go. And a great thing about this Rolls Royce is she drives it, and when he gets in the back, and he shuts the door. So on the right side of it, you'll have painted on an image of the Vincent Price Dr. Phibes in the mask on one side of it. The right side. On the other side, you'll have the left profile, but at the back, you have the back of his head painted on. It's a pure Avengers style little visual treat. It's so fucking stupid, but it works. It's what he would do, because he's got this quirky sensibility to him. He's a clockwork genius. He's hellishly financed, as they will find out, because all the funds from he was a very rich man, very wealthy, and but after he died in the accident, well, who took the money? Well, the money was transferred over to England, to London, and they found, well, who bought that medallion? And they go to the jeweller, and he says, it was a quiet woman, very beautiful, gorgeous she was, so well, who's this mysterious woman? Joseph Cotton, the doctor, the head surgeon, has a son called Lem, he's a teenager, played by Sean Berry. And they play chess, him and his dad. Not sure where the mother is. Again, another missing mother here. And I've talked a lot, in a lot of films reviews I've talked about lately, there's been a missing mother in the whole dichotomy. So, not sure. pattern developing there. Normally it's the fella that goes AWOL, but a lot of mums have gone missing. I don't know. And but his son plays the piano and the violin, and and he's a bit of a musical, impresario. And Anton Phibes was great with the organ and other instruments, a doctor of musicology. So they think, well, there's got to be someone must know who's been buying all this stuff, and there's a lot of clues that add up. So they do visit this guy where Lem, the son, gets his music instruments from, and they go and meet this guy. And that guy, if I remember rightly, is John Laurie from Dad's Army. He's the Scot, We're all doomed! It's him. But he's virtually blind and virtually deaf as well. So you get nothing out of him. I think it was a beautiful woman that bought stuff. So they're piecing it all together, but really slowly in the background. And I keep reaching for the bottle, and the bottle's up there somewhere. I've got a glass, haven't I? I'm doing it in very refined fashion, even though I've got this little wispy bit of abstract waywardness taking place. Cheers, y'all. Another doctor is killed. He and his driver. This would be Dr. Hedgepath, played by David Hutchison. And what happens to him? They're driving down. It actually looks like Blackwood by Bray. It isn't, but it looks like it anyway. And you've got Vulnavia there in a sort of the Russian sort of fairy Cossack hat, the sort of thing that Elizabeth Taylor would used to wear. And she's there looking very, very attractive. And it looks like their roller has had a bit of, mechanical trouble. So this other doctor and his driver are going past, and of course, well, pretty lady in distress. Well, she's actually walking a dog as well, but she kind of makes out, the car. So they pull over, and he says to the driver, go and see if you can lend assistance. So the driver gets out there, and he opens up, the front bonnet and all that, and he's looking in there, and suddenly Anton Phibes appears and puts on a Vulcan nerve pinch on his neck. And apparently William Goldstein said that, that's he has a sleeper grip which he can use. Vulcan nerve pinch. I mean, there are certain nerves that you can render someone completely immobile. Oh, folks, you can. Seen it done. I've had it done to me. I tried it and it didn't work for me when I tried it, and that led to a very drastic scenario where other methods had to be used very quickly. But you can completely immobilize and incapacitate someone by hitting certain nerve points. Anyway, he does a Vulcan nerve pinch, which I'm pretty certain Goldstein got from Star Trek, because Star Trek had been on, a good few years before. And this poor guy hits the deck. And then the other guy, this other doctor, Hedgepath, is in the back of his car. And Vulnavia puts in a clockwork, almost like Chucky doll in there. And he just turns around, he looks at that, and then shuts the door. And then the front door opens with the driver's bit. And you've got Anton Phibes putting in some weird contraption, and then shuts the door, locks it all. But he's wired it up to the car. What happened to him? Well, when our trusty police get there, they find this is a bizarre moment as well. His driver got the Vulcan nerve pinch, the Phibes sleep grip, and but there's a copper there as well, but this driver's lying in a different place now, again face down, unconscious. And he said, what happened to him? Oh, you won't get nothing out of him. What he said is mad. He's shocked beyond belief. So hang on, did he wake up again after being Vulcan nerve pinched, and then meet the copper, tell him what happened, and then collapse again? But well, it's a bit bizarre. But no more bizarre than what actually happened to this doctor, because all the windows are frosted. And he goes, well, what happened? Well, he won't tell you much. And they open the door, and the guy's completely frozen. He's frosted in the back seat completely. And they've got this machine there with a big funnel. So they turn it on, and all the hail comes out. It's one of the plagues is hail, a hailstorm. So, and like the copper goes, oh, he wouldn't have felt much. And they just slam the door. They leave the thing running. Slam the door. I wouldn't bet on it. So there's another guy that's died. So it's all kicking off. So now you've lost pretty much everyone except for the nurse. I've missed another one. Fuck me. There's another person that gets killed. Now who's this guy? Who's the guy with the and I don't think I've written his name down. I've missed this guy out, I think. No. Maurice Kaufman. Maurice Kaufman plays Dr. Whitcomb? Dr. Whit something anyway. So you've got, I apologise, I can't read my own writing, and I write these little notes down before it, and like I always think I'm going to remember these names, but I'm getting older now, and like the names that used to come to me so quickly, they disappear into the wild blue. Told you about the soundtrack. It's very avant-garde and weird, and it's not what you expect from a horror film. Not one from the 70s, not one from the 60s. In fact, not one at all. It's beautifully, well, a bit bizarre there, but it's very esoteric and lyrical and very jazzy throughout, and swoony throughout most of it. Another Doctor. Fucking hell, you know, we're almost on for an hour, and I haven't gone through all the killings yet. Because in Superintendent Waverley's like, you know, like look, just get this one Doctor, get him to safety, get him out, just get him out, take him somewhere. Like, we're going to take him to a country house somewhere, whether he wants to go or not, we're taking him. So they go to this guy's hotel or whatever, and then no, it's a gentleman's club, of course it is. And why have I got to go? Well, we believe your life's under threat. It'll only be for a couple of days. You know, I've got to get back for my patients. Don't worry, we're going to get you back for your patients. We're going to have this hope. We're going to catch the guy. You're going to be fine. It'll be sweet. It's only for a couple of days, promise you. And there's constables there, and you've got Inspector Trout. Sorry, that's the single malt repeating on me there. You've got Inspector Trout, and you've got his sergeant there, and they open these doors, and you hear whoosh, and like suddenly a big brass unicorn got a big spike on its head, a horn, has impaled this guy to the door. It's gone right the way through, and it's a nice bloody unicorn horn on the other side, dripping blood. And they're like, weirdly, they don't think to look out the door and see who's there or who did it and try and apprehend them. Because clearly whoever did it was over there, you know, outside somewhere. But this poor guy's been killed as well. Cue the great moment as well, like they're looking at this horn, and the sergeant says, looks like a left-hand thread. So they're trying to get the guy off, because it's a great big brass unicorn's head has got and impaled into the door. And you've got a guy reading, a stuffy old guy reading his paper, you know, in a big leather chair. And in the background, you can see this guy's legs and feet are spinning round as they try to unscrew him from the door. It's just brilliant. It's brilliant. And this guy's going like, could you please keep it quiet? You know, this guy's being unscrewed from the door. But you've got the superintendent. He's actually brilliant. It's John Cater, and he says like, what is it now? Oh, I've written it down. A brass unicorn has been catapulted across a London street and impaled an eminent surgeon. You're too late for most of these killings, these murders. How is it you arrive in time and you still can't stop a murder? But he is a twat, this guy. And incidentally, when Norman Jones, the sergeant's trying to chase the guy in the biplane, and he can't get there in time, he manages to get back to the police station, and he just goes there. He goes like, "Oh God, you know, I couldn't stop it in time." And Inspector Trout's going like, "Well, you know, tough shit, like. He tried at least. He said, yeah, and I blew a few gaskets on this. And he said, whose car is this? He goes, oh, I don't know. I just, it's the first car I could find when I heard about it. And then the superintendent Waverley comes out, John Cater, and he's going, what are you two guys just standing here for? You know, there's been more killings. You know, no one tells me anything around here. Get the job done. And what's my car doing here? Who moved my car? The sergeant's been driving the superintendent's car. And he says, like, you know, if I drove it anymore, it'd explode. And he goes, no one moves my car. You know, okay, all right, it's like that. And the camera stays on them as he gets in his car and drives off. And then you hear boom. And the two of them just go like that. So you've got all this comedy stuff. And yet they're not buffoons. They are doing their job. But that's the beauty of it. They're funny. They're comedic. There's lots of names and mispronunciations and arriving too late. And then having to deal with situations which kind of beyond their control. But with a sense of humour. A dark, ghastly sense of humour. Inspector Trout and Joseph Cotton, his doctor, they go to Highgate Cemetery and well, he's sure that this Phibes is dead. Well, let's go and find out. And they go to the real Highgate Cemetery. William Goldstein wrote this as Knightsbridge Cemetery. Knightsbridge Cemetery is a war cemetery out in North Africa. So I don't know where the hell he got that from. But it's Highgate Cemetery, a very legendary and haunted cemetery. And looks beautiful, eerie as well. And you've got the grave digger, who seems to know more than he's letting on. Although it's a bit of a red herring here, it doesn't go anywhere. And you go into the Phibes crypt, which was a real family crypt. And what they did, and if you look at the film, you can see how they've mocked it up. The real name of the family crypt is underneath a fake bit of sort of masonry with Phibes inscribed on it, which is just stuck on. But they get in there and they open up like Phibes' casket, and of course there's the pot of urns, but he's meant to be incinerated, but it's empty, you know. And they start thinking, well, hang on a minute. Well, anyone's ashes could have been put in there, even though it's empty. Anyone's ashes could have been put in there. It could have been a driver. They just said that, you know, Phibes was incinerated, but that didn't have to have been him. That could have been the driver of his car. He wouldn't be driving it. He'd have a driver of his own. Well, so you got that. But they open up his wife, Caroline Monroe's casket. Well, she must be there then, surely. Well, let's have a look anyway. Completely empty. Whoa! So her body's not there either. Oh dear. It's a frustrating case, isn't it? You know, who's doing what to who and how? He's dead, he's flambéed, and she's been killed and under the knife. What the hell? Frogs, bats. Oh, Jesus. So, they now, of course, they're trying to protect this. You've got the nurse Allen, played by Susan Travers. Oh, if I've got that right. Susan Travers! Yes! Yes! They go and get her. Of course, she's still a nurse. So they go to this hospital. Again, a very Art Deco, Baroque hospital with bizarre sort of green paint. And they say, right, look, we've got to get you out of here. Well, in fact, you're not leaving here. We're going to put you in your room. We're going to lock you in there. There's a guard outside. We've got, and you see the map of the entire hospital. We've got men here, 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 here. We've got cars here, 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 here. He can't get in. And then Joseph Cotton says, like, well, what if he's already in there? Well, that's what we want. If he's already here, he can't get out. That's what he says. So, in the meantime, you've seen Phibes and Vulnavia have been concocting something with sprouts. As you do. Sprouts. They've got a great, it looks like something out of Tiswas, or some old 70s kids TV show. It's all plastic tubes and stuff. It's all science gone completely stupid. And a big see-through vat of sprouts. And she's bringing up wheelbarrows full of sprouts, and he's going, puts it in, puts it in, and there's something, they're crushing down the sprouts. So in the hospital, he's already there. Of course he is. And when they take the nurse away from her duties, and like it's Trout and the nurse, and he says like, look, we've got reason to believe, and they get in a lift, and it's clearly Phibes behind them with a trolley with these two steel drums, cylinders on, which are obviously full of this sprouty sort of stuff. And then no one speaks, and Phibes just keeps himself to himself. But they don't speak in front of him. The doors open and they come out, and he goes, yeah, what do you believe? You know, well, we believe that there's a killer. He's killed everyone else on this surgical team. You're next in line. So don't worry, you'll be fine. Well, how am I going to sleep knowing this? Take a sleeping tablet. In she goes. Falls asleep. Phibes in the room above. A drill. It's stupid. Go. I know it's stupid, but it's great. And like big old, and he's got a diagram of a naked woman, which Vincent Price holds up in front of himself. So he's got boobs and like that chef's, the chef's sort of apron where it's got boobs and stuff like that, you know, or a big muscle-bound chest and a six-pack. It's just like one of them, and he lies it flat so he knows where to drill through. Right, their head's there, and then he pours this stuff all over her face, this green goop, which is from the sprouts, and then he unveils this huge cylinder of locusts, and that we all know that plague. And he puts a tube there, and he puts a tube into the cylinder of the locusts, and the tube goes down into the hole above her head. And he's tapping the glass. Come on. Well, he's not saying it. And they all tumble down. So, in the meantime, because it's quite clever this, they're kind of mixing up, like, okay, well, we've got her protected. Well, what's the, so the next, going in line with all these plagues, which Hugh Griffith read out wrongly, but for the sake of the movie, that's what they did. Right, well, he goes, well, I think the M1's for me, darkness. He's saving something special for me, because I was a head surgeon. He'll blame me most of all, so it'll be darkness. But what about this, the death of the firstborn? Well, no, the other doctors didn't have any children, but you have. And they go, shit. So you start thinking, it's clever. We could have been led here to believe, to look after the nurse, when really it's going for my son. And of course they have. They have took his son as well. Oh, that's the shock. So they get lured away, and they go back to the doctor's apartment, which is a fantastic place, I'll be honest. And they get there, and you discover that his son Lem, Sean Berry, has been abducted, has gone. And it's quite in a film where a lot of death, a lot of tragedy. You haven't really been affected by any of it because it's just in a very camp sort of, you know, spoofy sort of way. But you do kind of get this. Joseph Cotten, I've never thought was the best actor in the world. Never. Although he definitely was held in high regard, but his film career was in decline at this stage. And for his character, they wanted Peter Cushing. But in real life angst and tragedy, Peter Cushing's wife Helen is devoted to his wife Helen. She was in very, very ill health at the time, so Peter Cushing couldn't do it. And in a way, I think Peter Cushing would have been superb as the protagonist in this, as Dr. Vesalius, because once he realized his son is gone, you know, the angst there would have really come through with real immediacy and urgency with Peter Cushing, but it does not come through so well with Joseph Cotten. Although it's still there, it's the moment where you, oh shit, the son's completely innocent. How can you do that? So he said, like, look, they get a phone call as well. Right, look, yeah, there's bits I've missed out here. They find the nurse. I'll come back to this. They find the nurse. They burst in there, and the nurse, her face, there's all locusts everywhere, but her entire face has been nibbled and gnawed down to a skull, a bloodied skull, because locusts just devour everything. So they eat plants, they eat crops, they eat vegetation. So he covered her with like sprout juice, so that they just didn't know when to stop chomping and nibbling. So they gnawed it to the bone. So the nurse was killed as well. And then, of course, like, the son's gone. Now, what I should say, maybe should have said a bit earlier, Phibes can't speak because he's disfigured, but he's learned a way to speak. He's got a hole in his neck, and he puts a little into it, and it's connected to what do you call it? A Victorola, a Victrox, old sort of recording machine. Victorola, I think it is. And he can speak in Vincent Price's voice, but it is very broken, and it takes a long while to say anything. It's almost like Ent speak, you know, from Lord of the Rings. But he phones up Joseph Cotton and says, yes, I've got your son. But so you've got to come to, well, take me. Lem's done nothing to you. Take me. Swap my life for his. I'll come to you. You want revenge on me? I'll come to you. And Cotton's pretty good in this stage. And I said, so yeah, you come to mine at midnight. The house, the big mansion, Maldane Square. He goes, right. So he tells Inspector Charles, oh, we've got to get out there. And he said, no, sir, you don't go. Because Phibes has said, no, you come alone. No police, you come alone. So he's going to do this. But like, Charles said, no, you're not doing that. No, sir, I can't allow you to do that. And he goes, oh, maybe you're right. It's okay, sir, I know you're upset. We'll surround the place. We'll get in there. We'll sort this out. Maybe you have another drink of brandy. Oh, maybe you're right, Inspector. So they walk over there, and he just picks up a fucking candlestick or something and fucking clubs Inspector Trout over the head. And this is a great moment as well. You hear that boom, that sick thud on the back of someone's noggin, and the camera sort of set low down, and suddenly, what's his name, Peter Jeffrey, just goes like, oh, it just falls past the camera and boom, hits the deck. Joseph Cotton pegs it out there and gets to Phibes' mansion. Vulnavia lets him in without a word being spoken, of course. And in the fiendish final trap, the death of the firstborn. And no, we've still got darkness. But he's got this thing stuck in his neck, Phibes, and he's still got his mask on and all that, like. And he's saying to him, like, look, I'm gonna give your son the chance that my wife never had. You're gonna use your surgeon's hands and your skills to try and save your son. But look below you, and like you can see it on this fabulously ornate floor. You can see that on an operating table, but locked onto it is his son. And so like, here's an X-ray of your son. There's a key there lodged next to his heart. How's he done all this? Like, but anyway, doesn't matter. You know, there's a key next to his heart. You've got to cut into him, get the key out to unlock the manacles and the chains around his neck, and get him out the way. You've got 6 minutes to do it in, because within 6 minutes time, acid is going to come down this spiral tube and drop straight onto his face and kill him. So like, oh, you sick mad bastard, you know. So he's got to get down there and do all this. He's got 6 minutes to do it in. And Vulnavia opens up all the surgeon's tools and all that, and she's just stood there. Help or hindrance, who knows? Eye candy for certain. And he starts cutting in and all that. He manages to get the key out and all this. But you got Phibes. It's watching the acid coming down this thing. 6 minutes, Doctor. Vesalius. And he actually says here, you know, I'm going to give your son something you did not give to my wife, a second chance. I don't get that. The son is in exactly the same predicament as Phibes' wife. There's no second chance. She died under the knife. He's only got one chance of survival. To get in there, get the key out and get him away before the acid drops on him. There's not a second chance there. He's got two ways of dying, being either, you know, acid drop to hell, or the surgery goes wrong. Anyway, he does it, gets him out just in time. But you've had Phibes has come down, and Phibes has been unveiled. He's took the mask off, and you've seen that haggard face, the sort of cropsy from the burning. It is good makeup, apart from the fact that you can quite clearly see that it is a mask, and you can see the real eyelids, you know, and the surroundings of the eye underneath the mask, which kind of, the makeup looks great on Vincent Price when he's got Vincent Price's greyed immobile in their face with the beard and the little floppy wig that he's wearing. That looks great. That looks really creepy. When you see him unmasked as the real Phantom, the real Eric, as you could call it, and plays the organ as well, you know, it's very, very clearly inspired by that to a degree. That's effective, but it's not anywhere near as creepy as it could be if the makeup had been slightly better and more adhered around the eyes. But, you know, here's what it is. And you do see little shots, little shots of him beforehand. See, pick up a nose and a cheek, you know, and you see Vincent Price doing all this sort of stuff, and it is effective. It does work. Obviously, the police arrive, and they've managed to push Lem, the son, out the way. But in the kerfuffle that ensues, Vulnavia ends up underneath the acid bath, and she's mute. And this again is another little gaff. She's mute, but she screams when she gets covered in the acid, and you see clouds of stuff billowing away. Oh dear. I do apologise. I mean, I will have to, obviously. Where's it gone? A little array of fibrinalia. I just have to. Oh god. Oh, I can't get the bloody cork out of it now. Oh, that's a bit of a swine, isn't it? I can't get the cork out of it. Oh, okay. This has gone horribly wrong. No, I got this out before. How come I can't get it out now? This is almost like a Phibes fiendish device. Well, screw that then. I've got cork in my mouth now as well. But yeah, she screams, and this cloud of acid smoke is coming off, and the cops are there, Trout and Sheely, and they're kind of like, oh, we don't see it. Think The Beyond, Lucio Fulci's The Beyond, where acid pours onto the woman's head, and but you don't see it though. So they've saved the lad, and like Joseph Cotton says, get him an ambulance, get him to hospital, because he's just quickly carved him up and got the key out. As he stitched him back up again, could be copiously bleeding from his, this this impromptu heart surgery. So I've still got cork in the mouth. God, that went horribly wrong, didn't it? Have I got any left in there? Damn it. So, but Phibes has got away, and he's gone down the organ again, like gone down. Now, all throughout the film, you have seen Caroline Munro, even though she's not really acted in it. You've seen her picture. Oh my God, the picture of her in this is her hair's tied up. I've seen people saying that the hairdo is not from the time period. It's a more modern hairdo. I think it's actually very in keeping. It's sort of like a late 19th century hairdo. It's all tied up and it's big, but she looks incredible. And you will see that picture a lot in there. And he's gone and he recites poetry to her. My love, and one day we'll be reunited. Nine must die, nine must pay the price, 999. They're not calling the police there. Although there's 10 plagues, but of course, well, this is what we find out at the 10th plague. Almost find out. She said he's got her body, because her body wasn't in the coffin. Her body is there in a lovely ornate sort of glass bed, sort of tomb, and it's Caroline Munro. Finally, it's really her, although she's not acting, she's dead. She's just lying there. And had a tough time doing it as well, because she's bedecked in like a feathered sort of dress, a funeral attire, and Caroline Munro has a severe allergy to feathers, so she had to fight sneezing and coughing and wheezing. And of course, there's another major thing is that Vincent Price was a prankster, and he'd tickle her and he'd whisper in her ear and stuff like this, and he was a right swine. He'd make people blow their lines, and Vincent Price was a gourmet, and he learned how to cook, and he was a really, really great cook, and he would make this pate, which Caroline Munro remembers, and she said, like, also he'd bring this pate in, which was wonderful, but it had an effect, it would repeat on me, so my stomach would be gurgling and giving it loads and all that, like, so they'd have to do take after take after take. She's lying there doing nothing, but she's still ruining every take because she's sneezing and her stomach's gurgling, and he's whispering sweet nothings in her ear with this ghastly sort of makeup on. He gets in and lies beside her, and he pumps one tube into one arm, another tube into the arm. His blood goes out that arm, and what goes in the other one? Embalming fluid. He's killing himself to go into eternity with his wife. He sent the organ has gone back up, and of course Inspector Trout, the sergeant, and Joseph Cotton, the doctor. Well, what came up must go down. He must be down there. So they finally work out what combination of notes and stuff, and it comes down. Well, where is he? And they've gone off into darkness. The final, according to the movie's a lineup of plagues. The final is darkness, which is meant to be for all mankind, but they've gone off into darkness, into the afterlife together. And the film will end at that stage, and but the story does not end, because you've got another Dr. Phibes movie, and you've got at least 4 Dr. Phibes books which go on after the second movie, Dr. Phibes Rises Again, which I'm going to discuss in the next video. But William Goldstein loved the Phibes character so much, he began to write more books, and he explained the backstory of how Phibes could manufacture all these things and be so clever at these devices, these fiendish things, and also the whole Vulnavia background. Because obviously Phibes will come back from the movie, Vulnavia will come back for another movie, even though she got acid burn, but it's not the same girl playing it, because Virginia North, who played Vulnavia in this one, was pregnant, couldn't do it. But we'll talk about that in its own video. But back to this film. It's absolutely wonderful. It is so crazy, bizarre, dark, grim, gruesome, but such good fun. It's laugh out loud funny in places, and it's so crazy and warped. And that Avengers style is there with aplomb. Phibes is like a Fu Manchu, James Bond arch villain with a base. He's got his robots there. He tells Vulnavia as well at the end of the film, when once they've saved the kid, destroy everything, because he's thought, I've done everything I can now. My vengeance is pretty much complete, so I'm gonna disappear with the missus, if you don't mind, destroy everything. So she takes an axe and she's chopping up the clockwork wizards, and she's chopping up all the artwork on the walls. And in a great little shot, Joseph Cotton and Peter Jeffrey, their heads pop through the holes, where they just slice through, and she's still using the axe. It's great. Virginia North is wonderful as Vulnavia. Although she doesn't speak in it, although she does scream at the end, it kind of negates the whole thing. She wasn't real. She was just an animatronic, a clockwork woman. When you watch her, there's a bit where she and Vincent Price dance together, and if you watch, she's trying not to laugh because he's whispering again things in her ear. He's a right little swine. You see her playing the violin outside certain residences where they've committed the murders, but she can't play the violin at all. And learned, violinists have said, like, oh, she's bloody garbage, look at that. That's totally unrealistic. But to us plebs, you haven't got a clue, That could be her right now. And but there's loads of and she looks at the camera as well. Remember I said about when they kill the guy with the frog head, and he's like, I'm a psychiatrist, I'm a head shrinker, and Vincent Price just sort of goes like, because he knows the joke. There's a bit where, and he looks at the camera, looks at us. Vulnavia will turn around and look at us for a bit as well, and I forget the reason why, but it's a great little moment as well. There's also another moment when Terry Thomas is killed and they drain the blood from him, and the camera stays brilliantly on he's there, blood draining out of his arm. He's got a really sort of tacky painting on the wall, which is meant to be a sort of like, I don't know, religious. There's babes there, as in little kids, and a muscle-bound guy with big hair and all that, like, and a woman ensconced to him. And Vincent Price walks out of the shot, exits stage left as you're looking at it, and then the camera stays on it, but he comes back again and he looks at this painting on the wall like that, and then looks at Terry Thomas as it like, that shit. Why? Vincent Price was a practitioner and a collector of art, so he knew art and good art when he saw it, and that was not good art. It's kind of like, you bought that shit, it's brilliant. It's just brilliant. So you get lots of little asides, little visual motifs and things. Joseph Cotton, as I said, he wasn't having a good time because he'd just done Baron Blood for Mario Bava, which it's got its fans. It's okay, but it's not Bava's best. It's very far from it. And Cotton really doesn't belong in the movie at all. And as I say, some people would say that, well, he doesn't belong in this movie. Well, it was meant to be Peter Cushing, which would have changed the dynamics quite a bit, I think. But I do like Cotton in this. But apparently, he really could not remember his lines at all. So you've got, they only share the screen together during the finale, which would be Vincent Price and Joseph Cotton for that finale. And of course, Vincent Price, for most of that, has got a mask on. The only dialogue that you hear him deliver in the movie, Vincent Price delivers months afterwards when he had to come back and do the voiceover. They had to do the looping and all that. So on set, he's not saying a damn thing. And Joseph Cotton couldn't remember his lines at all. And he kept fluffing them. But even through the mask, and even with his gob sort of collodion wired shut, Vincent Price was telling him his own lines. So it was a good repartee. They got on well together, because Cotton said, he told me my lines, and of course Vincent Price loved this. He was lording over it all because he was the Prince of Darkness. He was the actor that wanted to branch out from horror, to do more classical and dramatic stuff. The irony is that in these last few years, well, this period of 70s with Phibes and the second Phibes movie and Theatre of Blood, he got to do the greatest Shakespearean bad guys ever. And even though in this one he doesn't speak so much, second one he does, But Theatre of Blood is the one that really gave him the chance to play a whole load of Shakespearean characters on screen, which no other actor's ever done, not in one performance, as in one movie. And he's brilliant in that. Well, we're going to culminate in that one because it's just, that is the pinnacle. But Dr. Phibes, The Abominable Dr. Phibes, is a truly tremendous movie, full of garish, outlandish set pieces, great, quirky little characters, a really snappy script, which is funny and clever and witty. Visually, it is stunning. The acting is great. The deaths are not as gory as they can be, but they still, the crushing frog head, oh, you feel that. You feel it. It's not nice at all. Terry Thomas getting his blood drained from him, and he squirms in the chair, and this look on his face, and it's like, because he knows, and it's like his grasping hand. Oh, God. That gets me every time. The eerie beauty of Vulnavia, and the slight wavering of could almost smile a couple of times, like, and blow the gaff, you know. But again, you know, it is Vincent Price who owns it. And in a great way, Caroline Munro owns it as well, even though she does so little. She just lies there and supplies a couple of photographs of herself. But that, because he keeps, Anton Phibes will sit there and he'll talk to her. He even has like a velvet glove with a ring on it, which is obviously hers, and he'll pick it up and he'll stroke that, you know, and you get this sense of a love, you know, beyond the grave, a love beyond time. The film Love Story had come out just before, and of course the tagline for that was like, being in love means never having to say you're sorry, and the tagline for this one was a joke on it, a riff on it. Being in love means never having to say you're ugly. And it had a picture of Vulnavia with some ornate headgear on, with almost like the bird with the crystal plumage, Dario Argento. These little sort of plumes coming out, these little sort of diamond skewers coming out of her head. And she's there with the unmasked Phibes, and that was one of the posters. And they're like that, you know, in a clinch. Something you don't see in the movie, obviously. At least not like that, you don't. But it was a little riff on Love Story, which was the biggest film at the time. Like, so it's clever. Robert Fuest and the other producers had a great idea with this. They ran with it and it worked. It was a big success. Vincent Price had a great time doing it, loved it. He was still shackled to AIP, and sadly, that ogreish brute, Sam Zedarkov, who still couldn't get out of it. Like, his Sears deals were sort of going through as well. So, as I said, he was using Sears to advertise their wares, but he was doing it in a way which would bring in art and the things that he was interested in. So he was getting paid to advertise their stuff, but he was putting his stuff out there as well. Clever. But, you know, he had a good time with this. He definitely enjoyed himself. And it comes across, even though, you know, he's wearing a mask, although it's his own face for most of it, but they've made his own face up to look like a mask that he's applied. It's really clever, that Russian doll thing. I think it's just superb. I'm now choking on bloody cork. I can't believe I screwed that up there. Oh, I'll get that out. Don't you worry about this. I'll get the bastard out. We don't want a cork. You see, this is a single malt, and I don't want to screw it up. I'm gonna have to get that out, but do it properly. Shit, time for a swig of that as well now. But folks, this review is longer than the movie itself. The Abominable Dr. Phibes. It came from the fingers of Dr. Phibes to the curse of Dr. Phibes. Again, those sort of titles are very Fu Manchu inspired. And it has got that Fu Manchu, Phantom of the Opera sort of genesis. But it would go on to inspire the likes of The Omen, Seven, Saw, many torture porn, Final Destination, you know, with set piece murders, that sort of thing. It's hugely inspirational and influential. Folks, I'm choking on cork, so I'm gonna have to cut this short. You guys, the ones who've stuck with me, have seen me slice my finger to the bone. They've seen me fall over. They've seen all sorts. They've seen spooks, you know, orbs and things happening. And now you see me choked to death on cork. Phibes, is this the 11th plague? Drowning in whisky and cork. Okay, I'm in, because I'll be back for the sequel, you know, like you were. But the Abominable Dr. Phibes is just delicious. The Avengers' sense of humour is superb, and that will come across in the follow-on to it as well, which we will discuss at length as well once I've been to the throat surgeon. Let's hope those surgeons are more successful and more skillful than the ones that worked on Anton Phibes' wife. And Caroline Munro, who does nothing apart from appear in a couple of photographs and then lie there. And she towers over the movie because she's the impetus of the movie. And you get it. The more you look at that photograph, the more entrancing she is and the more you feel for Phibes. It's all clever stuff. But Vincent Price really owns the film. Folks, I have been on with Shabby Kilt-Man. Please, in the meantime, and it's ever choking on cork in between time, please keep it kilted, keep it Celtic. And I am going to see you all haters. A brass unicorn is catapulted across a London street to impale an eminent surgeon. And you just stood there and did nothing? It's genius, isn't it?